Hello, good afternoon, it's John Heaton, and I've got 4 B-sides to go. So I'm going to do the 4th place one, which I've put Revolution at number 4 here. This is my list to date. It'll get filled, the last 3 spots will get filled as I do the videos. I don't have a single to show you because I don't have the Hey Jude single, so I thought I'd show you the US album, which contained both the A and B sides of that single, Hey Jude and Revolution. So a bit of a history to this one. It was obviously recorded first back in May, even before that at the Isha demos, and then when they got to the studio for the White Album sessions, the slow version of Revolution was one of the first songs they laid down, and John wanted it to be the new single for the Beatles, so he suggested this to the others. Both George and Paul said, no, it's too slow. So they made the good decision to go into the studio and record a fast version of it. Unfortunately, still didn't make the A-side of the next Beatles single because Paul had come up with Hey Jude, which even Lennon admitted was worthy, and so I think he was happy to take second place to Hey Jude, unlike the previous year when he was not happy that Walrus was the B-side of Hello Goodbye. So the fast version is featuring these heavily distorted guitars, quite deliberately distorted, to get a really punchy, aggressive sound, and the vocal is very impassioned, and Ringo's drums are also compressed to make quite a suffocating atmosphere overall. It's not the easiest song to listen to, perhaps, but it's enjoyable, and played loud, it really is very powerful. I think George Harrison is on record saying he prefers, his favourite version of Revolution is the Isha demo one at his house. I don't think he was a big fan of the distortion. So quite a controversial song in that, well, it was the Beatles being political, which they hadn't really been up to this point too much. Most of their messages up to now had been more general or subliminal. Karen Tyler says, the B-side now greatly contrasts with some of the more extreme political attitudes later adopted by Lennon. At this time, actionism was uncool, and Lennon's lyric firmly puts the knife into any hopes that politicos might entertain of the Beatles lending prestige to the demo movement. So in '68, it was the time of the student riots, and the revolution in Czech Republic was crushed pretty mercilessly by the Soviets. So there was quite a lot of call for kind of armed revolution. John, at this time, although on the White Album slower version he says, when you talk about destruction, don't you know you can count me out, in. For the fast version, he just says out. But then, interestingly enough, Lennon's not always consistent, never has been completely consistent throughout his career. So 2 or 3 years after this, he got involved with Tariq Ali and Abbie Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, and came up with some very political stuff. I'm still not convinced he was into armed revolution, but he was certainly less of a pacifist during that period, should we put it. There's an amusing line in Revolution, but if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to make it with anyone anyhow. And then 2 years later, in the Jan Wenner Lennon Remembers interview, he owns up and says, well, I'm wearing a Chairman Mao badge because I'm now just about beginning to understand what he's trying to do. So yeah, that's John not being, who needs to be consistent throughout their life. I think by the time he became a house husband and Double Fantasy, he was back to his normal do it with flowers self, thankfully. Interesting promo film filmed at this, directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg, both Hey Jude and for Revolution, and recorded at Twickenham Film Studios on the 4th of September 1968. Interesting to see the Beatles so energized and thoroughly enjoying those promo films, and only 5 months later, they were back in the same studio with the same producer, looking considerably more miserable for the Let It Be session. So that's interesting. So we've got July the 9th was the fast version. It was rehearsed on July the 9th and then laid down on the 10th. Mark Lewison describes the session in that excellent recording sessions book. Nicky Hopkins, did I mention, is playing keyboards later on to feature on John and George's, a lot of their solo albums, and also toured with the Rolling Stones and played on their albums. So yeah, Revolution, I put it number 4. It's a thoroughly worthy B-side. It could have easily been an A-side, or maybe it could have been a double A-side. And it's amazing to think that Hey Jude and Revolution were released as a single on top of the 30 tracks which were released on the White Album in November. So an absolute wealth of material at the Beatles' disposal, particularly during this 1968 latter half period. I think they were all energized by the Indian trip. It really inspired a lot of songwriting out of them, by all accounts. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.